The nerdy Helisimmer.
Hey guys, welcome back to my tutorial series on how to fly a helicopter on Vatsim and ATC phraseology. Today's topic is understanding the traffic pattern. The traffic pattern is a standard flight pattern used for departing and approaching a runway or runways. It allows for an orderly flow of air traffic under visual flight rules from or to a non-towered or towered airport. The standard traffic pattern is a left traffic pattern to be flown at 1000 feet AGL, so above ground level. So for example, if your airport has a field elevation of 1,700 feet, the standard traffic pattern altitude, if not indicated otherwise, would be at 2,700 feet. A left pattern means that in reference to the runway in use, the different segments of the rectangular pattern called legs are entered by turning the aircraft to the left. The non-standard traffic pattern would be a right-hand traffic pattern, where an aircraft follows the segments or legs by turning to the right. Which kind of traffic pattern to be followed depends on the specific airport that you're flying at. Checking out the airport information on SkyVector for Camarillo Airport at California, we can see that runway 09er has a right-hand traffic pattern, while runway 270 has a left-hand traffic pattern. Now we can see that no matter what runway is active at Camarillo, aircraft traffic will always remain south of the airport. This is probably due to noise abatement regulations, so no aircraft will fly over the residential areas north of the airport. We also find the same configuration at Hawthorne Airport in Los Angeles. Here we must not have any aircraft traffic north of the airfield because of the class Bravo of LAX. Now let's look at the traffic pattern in detail. The first leg of the pattern is called the departure leg and would have us fly a runway heading climbing out of the airport. Leaving the traffic pattern via the departure leg is called a straight-out departure. You can also depart making a 45-degree turn to either side. Always make sure though that you read up on the information for the aerodrome, about noise abatement procedures, minimum altitudes, and areas that you should avoid. Remaining in the traffic pattern, after approximately half a mile or once you reach a specific altitude, we would enter the left crosswind leg by turning 90 degrees to the left. Leaving the traffic pattern via the crosswind leg is called a crosswind departure. The departure and crosswind legs of a traffic pattern are used to climb to the standard traffic pattern altitude. After flying on the crosswind leg for approximately 1 mile, we enter the left downwind leg at standard traffic pattern altitude. If we decide to leave the traffic pattern via the downwind leg, this is called a downwind departure. If you're wondering about the terminology, aircraft fixed wing as well as rotary always tend to take off or land into the wind because the wind gives us increased lift. Hence the term crosswind and downwind. You might also come across the term upwind, which is opposite of the downwind leg and might be flown if you have to go around. On approach to the runway, from the downwind leg we enter the base leg, initiating our descent, and then turn onto the final leg, where we fly the short final and land on the runway. Of course, there is no such thing as a base or a final departure. If you should fly a straight and approach, you are basically just flying a long final leg to the runway, so you would report just that, a long final. Speaking of reporting, not every airstrip or airport is actually towered or has ATC services. That means aircraft operating at these airports are required to advise on their attentions on a common frequency. These frequencies are called Common Traffic Advisory Frequency, or short CTAF. You will find those on your VFR charts or on the aerodromes chart. On Vatsim, I believe the widespread use of CTAF frequencies has not yet been established, so you would usually do your advisories on the Unicom frequency 122.8. Now as an example, a departure from a non-controlled airport, as I would advise on Unicom. Random airport traffic. Helicopter November 9051 Whiskey Mike, taking off runway 09er, left downwind departure, climbing 1000 feet. Random airport. Flying from a towered airport, you might hear something like this. Helicopter November Whiskey Mike, winds 120 degrees at 5 knots, runway 09, cleared for takeoff. Fly left crosswind departure along the shoreline, maintain VFR at or below 2000. Now an example for an approach. Of course, I would have monitored Unicom or the CTAF frequency of the specific airport way ahead of time so I can get a mental picture of what's going on in the traffic pattern. Random airport traffic, helicopter November 9051 Whiskey Mike, Robinson R22 is 10 miles north at 1,500 feet for a left base runway 09 random airport. At a controlled airport, tower might give you instructions like this. Helicopter November Whiskey Mike, enter left downwind runway 09, report turning base, you're number 2. Apparently there is another aircraft in the traffic pattern that is landing right before us. When you advise on Unicom or CTAF frequencies, it is common practice to name the airport that you are referring to at the beginning and at the end of the transmission. So if another pilot has just tuned in on the frequency and only caught a part of your call, you will still immediately know where you're at. If you should be unsure where other traffic is in the pattern and to avoid any misunderstandings, just simply ask. That's what these frequencies are for. When flying a traffic pattern, you should be able to quickly calculate the courses you need to fly. Of course, in our example, it is pretty simple. Our runway heading is 090, so left crosswind would be a course of 360 degrees, the downwind leg would be 270 degrees, and we would fly 180 degrees on the base leg. With other runway headings, you can make use of a simple trick. Let's say we fly a left traffic pattern for a runway that has a heading of 340 degrees. I simply subtract 100 and add 10. 340, 250, 160, and 070. First number goes down, second number goes up. For right turns, I need to add 100 and subtract 10 degrees. So right-hand traffic for runway 03 would give me 120, 210, and 300 degrees. First number goes up, second number goes down. Of course, this is just a quick method and you should always recheck that your calculations are correct. Now finally enough, how to enter a traffic pattern if you're approaching the airport. You should enter on the downwind leg on a 45-degree angle and at pattern altitude. This ensures that you can better see any aircraft already in the pattern. If you need to cross the runway to enter the traffic pattern, you would do it perpendicular to the runway, crossing approximately mid-field and at a minimum altitude of 500 feet above pattern altitude. Naturally, always check visually for other aircraft in the pattern and monitor the Unicom or CTAF frequency. Flying traffic pattern approaches or departures at busy non-controlled airports can be quite a challenge, so communication is key. If you fly at a controlled airport, you might be requested to report entering a specific leg, most usually the downwind leg. But if you fly at uncontrolled airports, you should make it crystal clear what your intentions are and where you are in the traffic pattern. You should advise on entering the crosswind, the downwind, the base, and the final leg. Now for helicopters, there might be different procedures at the airfield that you fly in. For instance, approaching or departing from a designated final approach and takeoff area, FATO, usually a helipad that you need to taxi to or shoot your approach for. So this is not where you would park your heli. Sometimes you're required to fly a helicopter-specific traffic pattern that is well separated from the fixed-wing traffic. It is usually situated within the boundaries of the fixed-wing traffic pattern at a lower altitude, so you would have to fly shorter legs. A typical pattern altitude for helicopters would be 700 or 500 feet AGL, which gives us enough altitude to safely conduct an auto-rotation should we have an engine failure, but still keeps us well below the fixed-wing traffic. As a helicopter pilot, you might also be allowed to approach or depart via specific helicopter lanes or waypoints directly to and from the apron, a helipad, or from taxiways. Now before we check out a helicopter-specific approach into Bankstown Airport in Sydney, let's take a look at some typical phraseology. Closed traffic. Flying a closed traffic means successive operations involving takeoffs and landings or low approaches where the aircraft does not exit the traffic pattern. This is what you would ask for if you want to practice traffic patterns at an airport. Cleared for the option. An expression used to indicate ATC authorization for an arriving aircraft to make a touch and go, low approach, missed approach, stop and go, or full stop landing at the discretion of the pilot. Touch and go. A procedure, as the name suggests, that involves the aircraft touching down on the runway and then taking off again. It is used to practice landings and approaches. Low approach and missed approach. Whenever there's something wrong with your approach, maybe there's still an aircraft on the runway, or you have simply screwed it up, you would need to go around. If you want to practice that, you will ask ATC for a low approach, meaning that you will not touch down on the runway, you will rather follow a missed approach procedure, either climbing back up to traffic pattern altitude and re-enter the pattern, or following a different published missed approach route. Beam the numbers. A beam means that a fix, a point, or an object is 90 degrees right or left from the track of your aircraft. The numbers refer to the huge painted on numbers on the runway itself close to its threshold. In our example, we are on approach to Bankstown Airport in Sydney, having left Mascot Heliport via the Georges River 5 outbound departure, flying along the western shoreline of Botany Bay at 500 feet over water, and then up the Georges River at a maximum altitude of 1,000 feet. As we approach the VFR fix picnic point, I will make my first traffic call stating my aircraft type, my position, my direction of flight and my intentions. Bankstown traffic helicopter Lima India Zulu Robinson R22, picnic point 1,000 feet proceeding west for Chopper South, inbound landing at the main pad, Bankstown. Chopper South is a helicopter approach and departure fix for helicopters that leave Bankstown Airport due south or are arriving from the south for landing. From Chopper South we will turn towards the airport and cross the runway complex midfield at 500 feet. Afterwards we will join the traffic pattern for the helicopter main landing site. That traffic pattern remains inside the fixed wing traffic pattern at a lower altitude. Bankstown is a towered airport in real life, however for the sake of this video we will advise on Unicom. When you report your position as a VFR aircraft, you should report that you are at a certain fix, at a certain altitude, or you report your altitude, distance and general position to a certain fix, i.e. airport, waypoint or landmark. You should also state your direction of flight or make it crystal clear what your intentions are. To the right we can already see the airport, and up ahead comes Chopper South, which is located at an intersection of two creeks south of the Georges River. Bankstown traffic helicopter Lima India Zulu Robinson R22, Chopper South 1,000 feet descending 500, turning north crossing the runway's midfield for a left-hand downwind main pad, Bankstown. Beginning my descent here. Depending on the amount of traffic at an airport, it is not always necessary to report each and every leg of the flight. If the frequency is already busy, don't clutter it up by calling in unnecessary information. However, always make sure that other aircraft can understand where you're at and what your intentions are. Also make yourself a mental picture of where other aircraft in the traffic pattern might be. Also, you shouldn't count on that every fixed-wing pilot knows the helicopter approach and departure procedures as well as the helicopter waypoints. So for helicopters in some situations it might be better to simply report your position to the airfield, so a fixed-wing pilot wouldn't need to wonder, in our example, what Chopper South is and where it is located. Active runway is runway 11. So our heading for the airport crossing is 020 degrees, for our downwind 290 degrees, our base leg 200 degrees, and 110 degrees for the main pad. As I'm descending to 500 feet for the runway crossing, I'm checking visually for any traffic in the area. We can see the helicopter landing site called the main pad, just north of the runways. The helicopter procedure that we fly today is only applicable in daylight hours, so if you're flying at night you should adhere to the fixed wing circuit operations. Bankstown traffic, helicopter Lima, India, Zulu, turning left downwind for the main pad, parallel downwind, runway 11, Bankstown. Just added that slice of information to let others know that I'm flying a traffic pattern based on the main pad, but which runs parallel to the traffic pattern of runway 11. Bankstown traffic, helicopter Lima, India, Zulu, turning left base main pad, Bankstown. Bankstown traffic, helicopter Lima, India, Zulu, short final, main pad, Bankstown. As we shoot our approach to the main helicopter landing site from which we would need to taxi to our parking spot, I'm going to conclude this video. Hope you had fun, hope you learned something. Be sure to subscribe to my channel and stay tuned for the next episodes. We'll look into getting ATC clearance, taxi instructions, and in-flight communication. I hope to see you around next time. See ya!